The Shift is brought to you by SE Healthcare. Welcome to The Shift. I'm Dr. Andrea Coyle. Welcome back to the next episode of the Shift podcast brought to you by SE Healthcare. Just as a reminder, the Shift really is about how in healthcare we shift, and with every shift we make, it impacts so many lives. And here's an incredible story. Last fall, I went to a Vizient conference and I spoke on my Rise, Reignite, Inspire, Support, Empower. One of the amazing people I met at Vizient was Gena Woods, and that's Gena with an ENA because she's so fabulous. Gena, will you please introduce yourself to the Shifties?
Oh my gosh. Well, first, let me just start by saying I'm so happy to be here. And when I met you, Andrea, I was like connected. I felt like you were this soul connection of a nurse that I knew, I understood, but also a woman that I identified with. And I was like, she's wearing cool shoes. And not only is she brilliantly putting herself together, but I identify from head to toe. So I'm so excited to be here. And being a woman, being a nurse, being a woman of color, and being able to talk to you during Black History Month means so many things to me. And when I met you at the Vizient conference, I really was just recreating the brand of nursing for my department. And one, I've been a nurse for over 25 years. I've been in healthcare for 30 years. And my role is I'm what they call patient relations. I'm the associate director, and I love every minute of it. Being a nurse is really something that comes from your soul. You know, I consider being a nurse my soul work, and being in the role that I'm in is a perfect blend because I find myself as the go-to person. Not only am I a connector, right? I've always been a connector, but being a nurse, you connect the dots constantly. You think outside of the box. And being in my role currently, I'm able to do all of that and more. So I always wanted to do, I don't know about you, but for me, I wanted to do like 5 things. I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be a stylist. I wanted to be a broadcaster, and also I wanted to be a flight attendant. I feel like I'm all of those things at work with an empowerment to advocate for people. And I've always been, I was the only child, and I hated bullies, right? So I always fought for the underdog. So my role is all of that wrapped into one. And I'm so excited to talk to you. So let's get into it.
Oh my goodness, Gena. First of all, the first time we met, because you had great shoes on too, I do remember that. And so I always connect with people that have great fashion. But you said so many things in all that. And one thing I just want to say is it's so funny when you mentioned everything you always wanted to be, and nursing is all that wrapped into one, because nurses do truly, in my mind, make the impossible possible. I always say that. We touch so many lives, and it doesn't matter if you're a nurse in the direct care delivery environment, if you're a nurse in the role that you're in, if you're a nurse in my role as the Chief Clinical and Innovation Officer, we really, really can change the world. And I believe that. The other thing you said, and this is what we're going to riff about, is you like to empower other people. You like to advocate for other people. I want to know how you, Gena Woods, advocate for you as a woman and you as a woman of color. And that's what I told you I wanted to talk about in this episode. How do you advocate for women, and especially women of color? That's what I want the Shifties to know today. I want them to hear that.
You know, I'm glad you just jumped right into it. That's what I love about you, just straight to the point. Yes,
right.
Visceral. So let me just share with you that how I do that for myself is I take time out. You know, I pause. I'm trying to pause a lot, and I'm pouring back into myself, and I'm creating healthy boundaries. If I am giving like we do, right? As a woman, we're nurturing others. But I always try to do a pulse check. You know, a pulse check with myself and say, okay, I need to replenish, right? I need to replenish. And for me, you know, sometimes that's doing self-Reiki. and that's taking a deep breath, and it's, just putting my hands over my heart and doing that soul work, but also releasing that oxytocin for about 6 seconds so I can reconnect with myself to know what I need to do. And also knowing that it's not really urgent. Is it urgent? Is it emergent? It's really doing the levels. Because I think when we see these emails, is it really urgent? How are you prioritizing, right? So it's all about that, and also making myself a priority on my calendar. I started doing that. And so I take these walks for myself because I really engage with the world. I really love coming on campus. I have a hybrid role where I could be home for the majority of the day if I really wanted, but I come on campus so I can connect with people, so I can be of service. But I also have to come back and help myself. So that's kind of getting back into the world, and even just taking a walk and listening to the flow and the hustle and bustle of what's happening, or even smelling. Like, I love to smell the flowers and the trees, and it's all those things that happen. And I'm in LA, so it's kind of complicated. You don't get a lot of trees to smell, but you just feel the nurturing coming back to yourself, because it is in the natural organic space that you get to heal. So that's how I do that for me. And I also have great friend groups. Let me just tell you, I'm a very loyal person. One
Are
of my
you a
girlfriends.
Libra? Did we talk about this? Are you a Libra?
I know, no, all day long I'm a Virgo, all day. But I
Oh,
love Libras.
okay. Okay. I'm a Libra. So, and some of the stuff that you're describing is what I called in the presentation when we met is coming to your senses. When you take time to smell, hear, taste.
Yeah.
So that's coming to your senses. Keep going,
Yeah.
girl. 'Cause you keep
So I'm
preaching the
coming
love.
into my senses, and I think that that is important, that I show up that way, because when I show up that way, I model the way to be for others, because people are watching, and as a woman of color in a role and being an associate director of patient relations, I am empowered to help others and navigate their care and be present with them and offer myself. But I also know that other people are looking at me to see, well, how did she get there and what do I need to do? So I'm always about keeping the door open. I'm about mentorship, sponsorship, shadowing. And some of that just looks like when people come up to me, and I may not even have 5 minutes in my mind, but creating that space and being present with someone when they say, you know what, I just saw you do X, Y, and Z. I take the time. And then not only do I take the time, but I offer them in. And by offering them in, I say, well, let's set up some time. And it's not that LA moment. It's really that moment. Let's connect. And I have a mentee. I'm currently in this mentorship program that I helped to create here at Cedars-Sinai. It's called Black Women Leaders. That's where it started, but now it's just Black leaders. And then we have all employee resource groups that celebrates all of the inclusivity of people, from, being who you are, or LGBTQ, all of that is being celebrated here where I work. And, I'll tell you something. Mentorship is a reciprocation of giving and taking. It's giving and receiving. And it's not just you being a mentor. My mentee mentors to me all the time. So it's a pairing relationship. And we have what we do together called conversation and lattes. So we meet at a little breakfast spot, and we have about 30 minutes together, and it's really powerful because we're connecting, and I heard her tell me what some things she desired, and I made sure that I was able to help open the door for her. And she also heard me and opened the door for me, just remembering that being present matters. And you walk alongside the people that you support. Either by keeping the door open, someone is watching you from behind, somebody's watching you on the side, and somebody is watching you in front. And I will say this, I've been able to create beautiful opportunities through relationship equity. I'm very big on being kind to people. Now, I also know it's hard being a leader who's authentic. Sometimes you have a moment, and I go back and apologize. However, I am present with people, but I also hold myself accountable. So I always say, hey, how can I show up and be better for you? But also, I'm going to share with you, this is what I can do, and this is what I'm working on. So I think people respect authenticity, but they also respect your willingness to lean in with them.
The Shift is brought to you by SE Healthcare. Do you know your current burnout level? Almost 70% of hospitals and healthcare systems can't answer this question. What we do know are the devastating results of burnout: increase in turnover, increase in medication errors and missed care, a decrease in the patient experience, and a decrease in quality outcomes. SE Healthcare can help with our evidence-based approach. Leaders can enhance nurse satisfaction and nurse engagement, improve quality care outcomes, and reduce burnout by 52%. Are you ready to uncover burnout's impact on your team? Visit us at sehealthcaresolutions.com/talk. I like that. You said a couple of things. Number one, ironically, mentors are incredibly important. And I believe, especially as females in the healthcare industry. So my mentor, Dr. Marilyn Schaffner, and I believe I've shouted out to her before on my podcast. I'm actually having lunch with her today. She retired like 8 years ago, and she was my very first. She was the chief nursing officer when I was the magnet program director. And I still keep in touch with her. So that's amazing. The other thing I wanted to mention, something you said about in our roles, whether it's the clinical care delivery nurse, the director role that you're in, the role that I am, when we interact with people on the daily, we are always on stage. We're always on stage. And I learned that probably when I made a couple missteps on stage and probably failed miserably. But it's all that ability to go back and reflect and say, what can I do different? I don't like to say, what can I do better? I like to say, what can I do different? So the other thing, I want to ask you this question. When you talked about having a good friend group, which I call that my positivity squad. You can call it whatever you want. How do you sometimes remain positive and ensure that you have your squad, whoever your squad is, that you don't have haters in the group? Because we know as women and as successful women and women that have nice shoes, we have haters. So how do you make sure, or do a double take to make sure you don't have haters? And that's a tough question. I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but I know in my career, there are saboteurs or haters, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, you're absolutely right. Because of having your own flair and being a woman in certain spaces, you're going to bring it. Right. And I think that being a woman in the spaces I've been in, being a nurse, I've held myself accountable, and we're held accountable by these boundaries. Right. And now we're in different roles. So there's a lot of flex and adaptability in that. People see you. Right. And there is a light that you have that is a gift. And I know what my gifts are, right? And I know where I don't like to say weaknesses, but my opportunities are.
Right.
And one thing is I attract people to myself. That's what makes me a great connector. But I'm also a great giver. But I also have a great spidey sense. And I know, like you just said, for those that are hating on me, maybe it's something that I represent, right? That they like or dislike, but I also appreciate that because I'm able to know when people are being true and saying something else, right? So they're being true to themselves. So their behavior is incongruent. However, sometimes I'm able to check in with them and say, hey, are we okay? Are we good? And then that's when people are like, oh yeah, sure, I'm fine. And when they do that whole fine, I'm fine. That's when you know that it's not fine.
Right.
And if you're okay with yourself to know that you might bring that out in other people, sometimes it is the ultimate, I appreciate you, but I don't know how to say it. And women have been taught to, not all the time, some of us in different generations, to compete versus collaborate. When I see a woman with nice shoes and who's smart and brilliant like yourself, I'm going to say, hey, I want to be like you. How did you get in that space? Not everybody knows how to articulate that. And then that's what turns into that showing up as a hater. But I will say that with that, there's an opportunity to bring them in. And if it does not work, then guess what you get to do? Leave them where they are, right?
Right.
You can leave people where they are. But I will say there is something good about having someone that doesn't agree with you all the time. They may not be a hater, they just may not be your biggest fan. But they might also be able to bring out the best pieces of you out. And I have worked with people like that that bring the best part of me out because they're not saying, oh, that's so great or that's amazing. They might say, well, I don't really like that. I remember there was, I think the Kobe Bryant said, if you don't have haters, you're not doing it well enough. Right. And so I'll just say that it's a compliment to who you are and who you're evolving into, but it's also um, a piece for you to call them in versus calling people out that, hey, I see you, see me. Is there something I can help with? And if you can't, I would say leave the negativity behind. But if you can grow from where these people are trying to get you to, I really believe that that's partnership and relationship because not everybody is a true fan,
I
right?
love it.
Yeah, so that's what I would say. I mean, it's not an easy question, Andrea. Thank you,
I
but
totally
you're
put you
bringing
on the
it.
spot,
You
but
did, but
and
I
it,
hope I did okay.
you did great. And for the shifties, it's so funny. I always say, "Oh, we're just going to get on and riff," and I kind of that was a curveball, Gina. So thank you so much for being so gracious with the answer. The other
Yeah,
thing that really, and I know we talked about this early on. What what knowledge would you share with women of color that are trying to break the glass ceiling, or women of color that want to be like you because you're gorgeous and you're brilliant and you have great energy and you're a good human and you're successful? What would you say to them as a younger African American woman of color that's trying to get there? What would you say? How would you coach that?
I would say this, just do it, right? Nike said it best, just
That's
do
right.
it, because if you don't do it, you don't get to really tap into your true potential. And I would say that, how you do that is you look at other women that look like you or don't look like you. I think in spaces I've been in, sometimes people that don't look like me have, been able to pass the baton and say, hey, I see something in you. But it has to do with you showing up in excellence, right? Showing up in excellence. That's one. Two, color will transcend when you show up in excellence, but you also have to state what you want. And that's not always clear because we don't always know what we want, right? So I would say this, do the work, like figure out what you want to do. And when you figure out what that is, identify with other people that are doing it. So I'll make you laugh. I worked at this hospital for a very long time, but I used to work somewhere else. And they said, hey, you got to meet this woman. She's amazing. She's a nurse practitioner. She's a PA. She didn't know me. And I saw her walking by, but she had this energy. And I went up to her and I said, I love your style. I would love to sit down and have coffee with you. And I would love to learn to know how you got here. What's your journey? That's what I would tell other women that look like me, to go up to other women and just invite them in so that they can say, hey, can you share your pearls with me? Because not everybody knows. Not everybody knows. And not everybody is sharing because they don't want to come across as the know-it-all. As a Black woman, I will say this. I have been in spaces that I've been very blessed, and I have been in very tenuous situations where, microaggressions and experiences have been thrust on me because maybe I was the underdog or whatever that was. At the end of the day, I would say resilience. You have to persevere because we stand on strong shoulders, all women. All women stand on strong shoulders. There were so many people that have come before me, and there's going to be people that come behind me. And there's me right now in a space, but I'm keeping the door open. Just like I had shared with you before, I'm very big on mentorship. I'm big on sponsorship. I believe in helping other people through. And it's a blessing. I mean, I'm not saying I'm at the top. It's not that, but it's the point of being in a space that you feel blessed to be in because you worked your butt off to get there. Nobody gave it to you. So what you're asking me is what would I say for them? Don't allow other people to define you. Ask for what you want. Make the connections. You have to make the connections because of the connections that I have and I had by asking it maybe I was just really naive, but I would go up to people and say, I want to meet you. And they would extend. I had people write me letters to get into nursing school, and I had people write me letters to get in PA school. And I was blessed because I took the chance. And so I would say, take the chance on you.
Okay. So here's what happens, Gena with an E. And the E stands for everything positive and perfect. And so anyways, usually at the end of the podcast, we share takeaways, but you just did that. You gave your 3 pearls, which I love, and ask for what you want. You heard me in my presentation. I said this, I am a self-professed master asker. There's going to be one of 2 answers, yes or no. So take a chance on yourself. Take a chance on yourself and ask. You know, when you and I met after my presentation, we both took a chance. We asked each other, I want your contact information. I want your contact information. So that's what master askers do. And I agree with that 100%. And I loved what you just said. And I want to know your journey. Tell me about your journey. What a great question to ask someone. It's incredible. So I've taken that away. I'm going to start doing that. Tell me about your journey. I love your journey.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I could share something with you. You got lots of nuggets. So I'm glad
That's aligned. Wonderful. I love it. So, Gena, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy career to get with the shifties. The other thing is, at some point, I'm going to ask you to come back. We'll have you back on the podcast. Our views and our subscriptions keep going up and up because what we're doing on the shift is we're making a difference. And that's so important. I always end each episode with saying, shifties, remember, your shift makes a difference. Enjoying the shift? Help us reach more nurse leaders by rating and reviewing us on your podcast app. It takes just a minute, but makes a big impact. Search for The Shift, tap those stars, and share what you love. Your feedback shapes our future episodes and helps others discover us. Remember, rate, review, and amplify The Shift today.